All right, guys, so we're going to revisit slope-intercept form today. Make sure you've got it solidly in your brain so that every time it comes up, you know exactly what it means and what to do. So slope-intercept form is the way we typically see equations written, y equals mx plus b. So again, y equals mx plus b. Let's break this down a little bit. M is our slope, which is rise over run, and B is our y-intercept, which is where our graph crosses the y-axis. So slope-intercept form is very useful because every time you see an equation like this, you automatically know what number is the slope, what number is your y-intercept. The slope is always attached to your x in this form, and the y-intercept is always at the end, or not always at the end, but always separate from your x term. So let's try it out. First example, y equals negative 3x minus 15. Where is our slope in this equation? So reminder, our slope is the number attached to x, is our rise over run. In this equation, the number attached to x is negative 3. What is our number that is separate from the x term, not attached to x? Our y-intercept here would be negative 15. Again, the number attached to x is your slope. The number separate from x is your y-intercept in slope-intercept form. Now I want you to try example 2. What is the slope and the y-intercept when y equals 3/5 x plus 4? All right, our number attached to x is our slope. In this case, that number is 3/5. Our number that is separate from the x term, our constant, is our y-intercept, which in this case is positive 4. Alright, in this video we're going to talk about how you find an equation in slope-intercept form from a graph. So these are the steps I use. I'm going to talk through them and then I'll encourage you to pause your video and fill in your notes sheet. First, I identify the y-intercept, which is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. Reminder, y is your vertical axis, so in this case, the line crosses the y-axis right here. My next step is I find 2 points or coordinates on the line. One of those points is my y-intercept, and I notice there is another easy to see point right here. My third step is calculate slope or rise over run, remembering that we're looking for the change in y from one point to the next and the change in x from one point to the next. So our rise change and our run change. Lastly, you plug in your slope and your y-intercept into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. All right, I hope that you paused your video right now. All right, go ahead and pause your video. At this point, you should have finished copying in your notes. Now let's go through an example. This is the same example as is on your paper. First step, identify the y-intercept. We found our y-intercept to be this point here. I can tell that this graph is counting by ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At our y-intercept, when x is 0, y equals 8. Now I know that b equals 8. Now to find our slope, we need 2 points on the line to calculate rise over run. I'm going to use this point and this point. My rise, my numerator, my y change is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over my run, or my x change, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another thing I notice about my slope is that my line is going down. When I went from left to right, I actually had to go down 8. My rise was really a fall, it was a negative. So I'm going to put the negative sign right there, and I know that my slope should be negative because the line goes down from left to right. Now we can just plug in our m and our b into our formula equation of a line. So y equals m, which is negative 8 over 5, x plus b, which is positive 8. The equation of this line is y equals negative 8 over 5x plus 8. All right, let's talk about finding an equation from a table. The steps for finding an equation from a table are essentially the same as finding an equation from a graph. First step, and again, after I go through the steps, pause the video, copy this down in your notes. First step is identify the y-intercept, which is where x equals 0. Think about it. In order for a line to cross the y-axis, the vertical axis, there needs to be no value of x, no left or right component of the coordinate. So, at the y-intercept, x will equal 0. Step 2, choose 2 points from your table. Step 3, calculate the slope or rise over run. Step 4, plug it into slope-intercept form. All right, now that you've copied that down, let's go ahead and work through an example problem together. So I have a table here. Go ahead and fill in your table. X is negative 15, 0, 15. The y components are 48, 3, and negative 42. On the side, I have written y equals mx plus b to remind me of slope-intercept form. I recommend you do the same. I've also written b equals because I know my first step is to identify the y-intercept, which is where x equals 0. And remember from our previous videos that the y-intercept is represented as b in our equation. So the point where x equals 0 on our table, y equals positive 3. All right, now we need to find 2 points from the table to find the slope or rise over run. I'm going to go ahead and choose the first 2 points to make my life easier. So I have negative 15, 48 and 0, 3. If you prefer, you can plug these 2 points into the formula for slope. And this would look something like y2 might be 48 minus 3. That's saying 48 is our y2, 3 is our y1, 15 is our x2, or negative 15 is our x2, and 0 is our x1. So negative 15 minus 0. That would give us a slope of 45 over negative 15, which You divide top and bottom by 15. We get m equals -3. I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. The change in y, difference between 48 and 3, is going down, negative sign, by 45. The difference between -15 and 0 goes up by 15. So if slope is rise over run, our change in y over our change in x, change in y, change in x equals -45 over +15. Same math, more or less. 45 divided by 15 equals 3, and negative divided by a positive gives us a negative. So we've got b equals +3 and m equals -3. So now we can just plug it right on in. Y equals m, -3, x plus b, which is +3. That is how you find an equation from a table.